Yeah, but while we're waiting, thank you so much for doing this. This is like really great. We weren't planning on having guest speakers at first. This is like a really great opportunity. Okay, yeah, so I think we can just start off since we have a lot of people in right now. So hi everybody, my name is Ratika, for those of you who aren't part of the club. But so yeah, today we are going to be leading our second meeting for the Splunk Education Club. I'll just give a brief overview of what Splunk is for those of you who haven't heard of it before. But Splunk is basically, oh, sorry, I'm having a bit of a technical difficulty. What's that? Okay, yeah. So Splunk is a public multinational corporation that produces software for searching, monitoring, and analyzing machine-generated big data. So basically what that is you get business data from companies, and Splunk will format that into legible information and insights through their web-style interface. And this just makes business activities a lot more efficient and easier by kind of, just making readable graphs and creating databases for companies who are using Splunk. So today is a really special meeting because we are having a guest speaker, Mr. Timothy Larson. He leads a team of software developers at Northrop Grumman. He graduated from Virginia Tech. He also got his master's there, and he works with the state government as part of his job and has a lot of experience with cybersecurity and data analytics. When we told him about this club, he was really excited and interested in what we were doing here. He works closely with the Splunk platform for his job, so he was nice enough to offer to speak about his experiences with Splunk, different paths that you can take with the Splunk certification. And I believe he's showing us a small demo that he's prepared. But yeah, so while he's doing that, please feel free to ask questions and interact because that would definitely make this a lot more easy to move along and a more interesting experience. So thank you so much for doing this. I'll hand this over to you now. Let me just stop my screen share. Yeah.
So it's always fun to work with the new video teleconferencing because you never know if anybody's even listening to you. So can people hear me out there okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, good. So I put this together. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me. So this is a picture last October I went to Scotland. It's beautiful. You see castles on the side of the road, and I think that's really cool. I was gonna, let's see here. Can I bring up questions while I'm doing this? If I go, okay. So if y'all have questions, I'll be able to see it on a second screen. So by all means, jump on in. I see we got 20 people, and that's really cool. So yeah. Okay, so let's start with me. So as was mentioned, I went to Virginia Tech. This is my puppy, Kenji. Ironically, he was named after my lab partner because Nikki was my another lab partner, and Kenji did all the work, so it's pretty cool. And I'm an engineer, so it's kind of interesting. The cool thing about Splunk is you can do lots of different things with Splunk, but I almost always use it to solve problems. If I were a business leader, I would probably use it to extract information to allow me to make smart business decisions. Like, should I make, if I'm Elon Musk, should I spend more money selling Model S's or Model 3s? So, and that's the data analytics. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. It's kind of neat talking to you guys because when I was your age, this was my world. That's the Bengals. I'm sure everybody listens to the Bengals. No, not at all. And I have in the top right corner there, what I have is, that was VisiCalc. That was the precursor to Lotus 1-2-3, which was the precursor to Excel 1-2-3. And if you think about it, this was in 1980. And in 1980, if you wanted to solve math problems, people didn't go to they had calculators, but not like the ones we have today. And most people didn't even have computers. And I actually owned that car, which was made in 1968. And it used gasoline, which is interesting because I'll show you what I use now. I drive a Tesla, it doesn't. And then I showed my wife this thing here, and it's like, that was my computer when I was 13, 14 years old. And that was my printer. And that printer actually, if you can imagine, y'all have probably seen these tractor fed things. You'd buy paper in a box and it was all connected and it would just run through. So that was then. And I mentioned that because I was 40 years ago, I was about your age. And now this is the world. And the reason I say that is we're talking about Splunk, which you see here in the top right-hand corner, and things that Splunk monitor, they weren't even invented when you guys were kids. Like, you have things like these things called sensor. Almost every house has some smart alarm system. And 20 years ago, they didn't use Wi-Fi to go anywhere. And they have smartphones and devices and virtual machines. And most of y'all know what a virtual machine is, but back in the day, that wasn't even a thing. 20 years ago, it wasn't a thing. And 40 years ago, PCs didn't even look like they did today. So lots changed. Those are the Bengals. They had changed their hairstyle and their clothes. And as I mentioned, I drive a Model 3. This is actually my car. And even books are different. So as we have this thing, I would kind of call this a Splunk adventure because I think Splunk is awesome. And it also shows you how far things have come in 30 years, 20 years. And it's really interesting to me to think what's going to be happening in 40 years. Are we going to, literally be flying, little planes to work? I mean, to me, that's as crazy as when I was a kid thinking that I would have a car that would drive itself using, AI, artificial intelligence, reinforcement learning, and, neural networks. I mean, so the world changes a lot. And Splunk is right there. Right now, Splunk is at this sweet spot where it allows you to look at tons and tons and tons of data and make intelligent choices and pull out useful information. And you don't have to use Splunk. There's other competitors to Splunk, but even every product on here, whether it's Audible, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, they have some type of data analytics engine keeping track of things. And basically business changes just like technology does. So I'm going to say one more time to remind anybody, if you have any questions as we go along, if you mouse over your screen, you should have a chat option. So by all means, ask questions along the way, because you could always pull up a YouTube video and Splunk, it would be just as interesting as this, perhaps. So let's go back to what we were talking about here. So that was me. So this is kind of interesting. When I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, which is a long way from here. And I say it was a long way because everybody around here takes for granted that you might have a relative that works within 5 miles of a federal government building. But when I was a kid, DC seemed like a place far, far away. And my job, and again, since I'm an engineer, most of the things I do are very engineering oriented. But data analytics is kind of the key framework. And I think I'm going to say her name wrong, but Ritaka? I said it wrong. Ritika.
Yeah.
I have to do it phonetically. Ritika said very well. She actually did a great explanation of what data analytics is. You look at a lot of data and you bring out useful information. And from that useful information from a lot of data, we have cybersecurity and information technology services monitoring. So let's just look at this a little bit. Data analytics, have some useful information from data. So here's a good example, and I'm gonna insist that somebody respond to this on your chat, just so that I know that y'all are awake. So this is a lot of data. So give me some ideas. What is this showing? This says coronavirus, and there's some pictures of countries, and y'all can either go off mute and tell me, but what does this show a picture of? Any ideas? Confirmed cases. I think it is cases that have been confirmed. That is correct and reported. I think outside of the US, it was the WHO. Inside it's probably CDCF. So this is think of all the data, what the data actually looked like. And also, you might not have thought about it, but are you sure this is accurate? I mean, are there people that maybe had it that didn't report it? Are there false positives? Are there false negatives? You know, people that might unfortunately get it and think it's a cold and never report it. So how accurate do you think these numbers are? And I'm going to wait for somebody to reply before I move on. Any guesses are acceptable. Would you say this is 100% accurate, 90% accurate? I think everybody's asleep.
Probably like 80%. Like, I'm not really sure, but I know like the US is like the highest one.
Okay. Well, and the interesting thing is, okay, so I see an 85%. Okay. The interesting thing is there's really no way of knowing. And if you were really interested in data analytics and you went in and studied it as you got a little older, that in itself is a whole nother question. And it's actually a really important question because a lot of things depend on how many people are sick. You know, right now, most of us I feel like we all got detention or timeout that we have to stay at home. You don't get to go to school. And I don't know, we'll have to do a poll on whether that's good or bad, but nobody knows. But this information, that's the best data we have. And then what do we do with it? Just so you know that we have a bunch of cases and we're number one, what do we do with it? Well, since it's a State Department presentation, I have this slide here from the State Department. US government, we are blessed. We have a little bit more money and medicine and technology so we can share it. So what we would do is we would correlate that data on how many cases there are. We would correlate that with how much each country had in terms of financial resources, how much they had in terms of food, see what was going wrong. And that's what a tool like Splunk can do. And data analytics, correlating multiple things and getting answers that we can, I call this logistics engineering. What's the most efficient way to share our resources with other countries? That's kind of all dependent on data analytics. So, and yeah, I think it's really interesting because as I'll say, I think in the old days, you could only call yourself a data scientist if you had a PhD. So I don't really think I'm a data scientist, but I have a master's degree and a lot of school. So I know it pretty well, but it's interesting because once you know this, you start looking for all of the false negatives and the impact, and actually the cost of not reporting things correctly. It might be the difference in how much aid you get from the US government. So I think, Ratika, I said that wrong again, probably. So tell me one more time.
Oh, no, you were right.
Okay, Ratika. I know I talked to your father a little bit and you're interested in the business. Well, all of this data analytics ties directly to money and how businesses make decisions. And so hopefully that data analytics to me sounds extremely boring, but it's really fun to do, especially when you tie it to things you're interested in. And I'll talk. And so speaking of things I'm interested in, cybersecurity. So I think this is a great picture because if you look at the ones and zeros, might not be so interesting, but being able to drill down on these, basically everything that computers talk to are ones and zeros, and pull interesting information out of it to defend the network, or, well, usually it's to defend the network. That's where Splunk excels. And Splunk actually has very expensive security add-ons to the base Splunk. And the cool thing is, if you're interested in doing cybersecurity in any way, you kind of get a cybersecurity light package that you can learn about, you know, at least 80% of all the tools and stuff that are involved. And I think I had it on this thing. Yeah. So the expensive one that they sell is called Enterprise Security. But you guys, if you had your own system, could download and install Security Essentials, which has a lot of the same stuff. So show of hands, see if everybody knows how to raise hands on this thing. Is there anybody that's least bit interested in cybersecurity and using computers to hack and that type of stuff? I'll give you like 5 seconds. I'm just curious if anybody's interested in it. Okay, a couple people. Yeah, okay. This will determine how much I talk about it. So by all means, if what I say makes sense or you're interested in more, throw a question up and I'll be happy to talk. Seems like everybody who got here early, or else it's alphabetical, was interested. So that's kind of cool. All right, so I put this thing up, this slide, and this is basically a risk matrix. So remember we said that there's a lot of data, and the neat thing about analytics is to pull useful information. So let's say at the State Department, we have 200,000 computers, and every computer has between 30 and 100 vulnerabilities. So how do you determine where you should go try to fix and patch vulnerabilities first? And so one of my other products, I don't use Splunk for this, and we built it from scratch before, was a product called iPost. So if you're interested, I'll just type iPost, and I'll also type CDM, and it stands for Continuous Diagnostics Monitoring, I think, because I haven't looked up the acronym for a while. If you're curious, you can look at it. So what's really neat for me is about 15, 20 years ago, probably when y'all were very, very small, maybe not even walking yet, I went to the State Department and they had this product called iPost. And what this iPost did was it looked at every single device it could find on the network and it scored it. And it was kind of like going to school, every computer and every site. So I didn't really talk about what the State Department does. How many people know a little bit about the State Department? Go ahead and raise your hands. I'll be watching, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. So the State Department's job is to have relationships with lots of other countries. Okay, not a lot of people, so I'll talk a little bit more. So the State Department's job is to interact with other countries, share information and aid, and basically support other countries to be successful and to promote everything from economic growth as well as just general goodwill. And if there's an issue, it's a whole lot nicer when two people can get in a room and, you know, shake hands, as opposed to the last thing anybody wants is to have a war or have some type of conflict. So it's a diplomatic group. So that being said, it's a really important organization, one of the largest organizations. So we have lots of computers, but the more computers you have, when you look at this risk matrix, you have everything from things that are very scary to things that are just a little scary. And iPost went in from not every single country, but hundreds of countries, over 250 countries out there. We have at least one embassy in, and our job was to have each embassy patch their systems. And in order to motivate them, we basically gave the systems administrators at every post a grade, and literally it's an A, B, C, D, or F. And if you get an F, you might not be able to keep doing that job for long. So you never get away from school, right? That's actually kind of funny. So the neat thing about that is one of the products we're working on now is CDM. They actually built CDM from iPost at the State Department. So it's exciting to be basically working and the team lead for the product that the Department of Homeland Security then turned around and said, that's going to be our model for everybody domestically. So all non-military organizations are doing this. So any questions about that before I move on? All right, let's move on. I think my puppy just came home. All right, last thing. This is a little bit more. If you go and look at the tools that I mentioned about Splunk, this shows you MITRE is another company, and they go out there and they help basically tell you how attackers attack your network and what you can do to prevent them. And actually hackers have gotten really good. And if you want me to tell you stories, I can tell you stories about some of the things that they do, and you can look them up. But it used to be that you would see somebody coming through your gateway, and you would see that they were from, I don't know, I'm gonna pick China since it's a popular name in the news. And he's like, oh, China, what's China doing sending IP, traffic, network traffic into our thing? So domain names, you can see it's pretty easy for us to figure that out. But it gets harder and harder because then they started having things like at the tool level where you can go to some of these sites and pick up a product like Metasploit or some of the hacker programs. And if you're able to get that, it does all the work, and the tools are actually designed to be hard to detect. So that's even harder. And then at the tough level here, this is called tactics, techniques, and the P is procedures, but it's basically the common knowledge. So what happens is, now what they do is, if they get a partial entry, they'll back off so you don't see it, and then they'll come back 3 days later. So what Splunk has done with their enterprise security product is they have, in addition to enterprise security, they have user behavior analytics. So they can detect both insider activity that is unusual and outsider. And more what they're doing is not just showing you, oh, somebody's coming from a country that we don't really understand why they're coming into our network. They're actually taking it to the next level, and they're deploying artificial intelligence models, neural networks, and machine learning algorithms as part of this. So because basically people sitting at a desk looking at Splunk dashboards can't handle it anymore. So I think all of that's kind of neat and interesting. So that is cybersecurity. And I'll give I'll give about 3 seconds. Any questions? I'll even give 5 seconds. We have a very quiet crowd. So then, now this next thing is kind of my thing that I started doing a long time ago. So we have a lot of countries here, and I think this actually indicates like how much bandwidth, how many people are using computers. But I put this up because I don't know if y'all know this, but this type of graph is really, really easy to do and is kind of built into the box, if you will, of Splunk. But these numbers could show bandwidth usage, which is what I measure at work. One of my jobs before I was doing the cybersecurity and data analytics, I was a network engineer. So we had to constantly monitor to make sure that all these countries had access back to the United States. And part of the reason I took this job is I thought it'd be really neat to be part of a global network, because you see lots of different things that you don't see otherwise. As an example, in Africa, you see that it's a much lighter shade. Actually, most of the people I think in Africa get their internet connection via their mobile device, because they don't have the same infrastructure that we did for like Verizon Wireless. But all of that being said, so when we put an embassy out there with an ambassador, you don't see, basically you'll have a higher latency, you'll have packets dropping, because quite often we'll even use local internet service providers, and they're just a few years behind us. It could show power usage. Another thing the State Department did in order to save money and to be more, you've heard the expression, be green, is that we have a program that we pay money for, a computer program that goes out there and turns everything off at night. And of course, night is at different times around the world to save money. And part of the data analytics business side of that is we measure how much money we save because we're not paying electricity for, I think I mentioned there's as many as 200,000 computers out there at any time. And then the last thing, it could be packet loss. I mentioned that. So being able to measure this and see things before they go bad, or be able, because a lot of times, and I'll get into this a little bit later, it can take a long time to figure out something's wrong. And the first thing they want to do is say, well, what is the problem? And again, being the engineer, my job's always been, how do I help them figure out what it is? And then eventually I want to teach somebody that has less experience, perhaps, one of you, as you come out of, college, that you might work at a help desk for 2 years. I want to give you tools so that you can go figure it out, because I've already figured it out once, and so I don't want to have to be called in at 3 o'clock in the morning to come tell you, oh, somebody unplugged that router. All right. So let's see, how long have I been going on? About 25 minutes. So now the funny thing is, I didn't finish this presentation because I got too busy building a Splunk instance, but I'll go through the first part of this. This is being recorded. I found these top 10 things in an EDU CBA course, and it was like uses of Splunk. And I wanted to mention a few of these. I think we have a lot of people that haven't used Splunk a lot, so I'll at least mention them and tell you why I think they're right. And I'll stop about here because that's when I stopped putting the information in, because I didn't want it to be long and long-winded. So show of hands, how many people have started the Fundamentals 1 training? Okay, so not too many. About a third, a little less than a third of you have done it.
Yeah, everybody in the club has started. I think they're on about like module 6 by now, so halfway through.
Okay, cool. So kind of the real thing that would be funny, how many people think this is the coolest thing ever? One person, and she put her hand down, she was self-conscious. Yeah, I think the cool thing about SQL is, just like when I was a kid and I was doing VisiCalc, which is like Excel, I'd say, hey mom, look at this is really cool. And she'd be like, and literally she said, I can do that with a pen and paper pen. It's not that cool. SPL, what's neat about this is like the underpinning, this is like learning math, but then the cool things that you can do later, like hunt down a cyber terrorist or something. And I didn't get all my examples together that I'd like to show you, but it took me about, it probably took me about half an hour, which I didn't have because someone called me before this meeting, that I can set up. And within 30 minutes of setting up a server on AWS, you can use Splunk. And I could see 10 to 15 people in the first hour come and try to hack into my server using Splunk. And I thought that was really cool. So in the back of your mind, it all starts with the 140, basic commands that you learn. And then all those things, like even with the COVID, being able to determine and make those graphs, this is just kind of like the thing that I think it's neat because it's easier than a lot of other things that I'm going to show you, but it's still not as much fun as, I don't know, watching a TV show. Show of hands, anybody here of Splunk Base? Because I'll probably talk more about it. Okay, not many people. So again, when I say the SPL is nice and it's a needed thing, but what is cool is everybody's already written a bunch of really good applications for Splunk using that SPL. And I won't be able to show you great things, but I showed you some of the ones that I've used or have some relationship. So I can actually monitor my Tesla. I can tell you how efficiently it's running, the battery usage and all that stuff by tying this app in with my API token. So I think that's cool. And it's free. Everything on Splunk Base actually has been approved for use by the company Splunk. So it's basically it follows their best practices. So it's kind of like these all got an A+. Now there are other apps out there on GitHub, and again, show of hand, how many people have heard of GitHub? I'll wait while y'all do that. I'll actually move on. Okay, so y'all have heard of GitHub. That's awesome. So what's neat about this is you might not have the time and inclination with a cool Splunk app you make to put it on to submit it for approval, but there are hundreds. And one of my favorite apps, which if I come back, I'll show you, is a systems engineer at Splunk actually wrote it for me because I told him what I needed and I didn't have time to do it. And he put it on GitHub. So I usually pull that over as the first thing I do. There's also the deep learning toolkit here. I've used that quite a bit. And then I mentioned the security essentials. Anybody can download that. And then part of what I want to show you is there's all kinds of things out there like the Warcraft logs, which is World of Warcraft. And I don't know if it was this app or another, but the professional services engineer, and this is kind of a cool story because you out there, if y'all learn Splunk by the time you're 18 to 20, you should have a pretty good skill set, and you can write apps that you think are interesting. Well, this one engineer, when he was playing, games in his spare time, he kept track of all the top level items, where they were, how much they were worth in World of Warcraft. And then that was his basically opening pitch when he applied for a job at Splunk and got a job doing professional services. And he was one of the people that works for me right now. So just to change it up a little bit, we will zoom out of this. And I use this little app here called Start Me. And these are all the things these are all my links to help me. So I just wanted to show you, and you'll have it. This is called gosplunk.com. Of course, they want you to sign in. But this basically is a query repository. So as you're learning your how to use SPL, there's a place where people put their really cool queries out here. I haven't worked with this one that much, and they have a reference guide. I haven't looked at this lantern, but I'll open it up in a new window because what I really want, I thought I had Splunk Base. I use Splunk Base so much that I don't even have it on here, but we'll go to that separately. So this, by the way, is conf.splunk.com. And basically what's neat about this is if there was something you were interested in, let's say you wanted to learn how to do better dashboards. You can just go in here and type dashboards, and they have all these videos here. You won't find them on YouTube, but they'll tell you things you can do beyond what you have in the box. So these are hundreds and hundreds of videos. When I went to the conference in 2017, it was in Washington, D.C., and people that went to the conference had to spend a lot of money. And all of these will have usually video, and they'll also have slides. So this is also a good place to start. And I think there was one on how to build your own lab, and I can never find it when I first search for it. But there's all kinds of things, how to fight human trafficking. But if you're wondering of all the cool things you can do with Splunk, this is yet another place. It's the conf.splunk.com site. This is a bunch of use cases that sounds a little boring, so I'll skip it. And then we looked at this, but what I was going to show you is Splunk Base. And it'll take a second to come up. So what Splunk Base is all the different apps, and you can see they have over 1,000. And I mentioned IT operations. If you're a developer, you might be interested in the DevOps package. If you're interested in business analytics and cool charts and graphs, that would be here. And of course, they obviously have things for cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a big part of what they do, and then you can just browse through them as well. And the last thing that I'll say about this is, if you were thinking of building, a bigger project, they've probably already done it in here, and you should know how to do it yourself. But it always helps to start with what they've already done and expand on it. And again, that's part of kind of like the GitHub, the same thing. It's always good to start with something somebody's already gotten a head start on. So let's see, where was I? Okay, so I'm going to go back to my presentation here, and we'll make it bigger. So I'm going to scoot through these really quick, but I don't know how many of y'all have worked with databases. This is like a third normal form view of a database. The neat thing about Splunk is you just dump the data in there and you can go. And so even for me, I've done quite a bit of work with Python where and Python made it easy to read a CSV versus Java, because I started with writing Java code, but it's even easier with Splunk. So that's another cool thing about it. This says scalable and has no backend. Just for fun, to make sure people are out there, I need 5 people to respond. There's an indexing tier so that you can ingest more data faster, Guess how many indexers I have in my instance at the State Department? Nobody's writing. Okay, 40. Ooh, Brian Sharp. Wow. I have 37. I mean, y'all got so close with that. I think that's good. So we have, yeah, 37. I think y'all shared. Y'all have a separate Skype going or something. But yeah, that's exactly pretty much spot on. So we can ingest up to 7.5 terabytes. That's a lot of data per day. Right now we're only at 2.5, but basically we have roughly 1,000 Windows servers that are domain controllers. And with that many servers, it's kind of a piece of cake that I can go in there and I can say, tell me every time Manny has logged in or Ria, and it will tell me, I can go back 60 days, however much, and I can see where they logged on and all that stuff. So the fact that it's scalable like that, good luck trying to do that with any other system. It's pretty cool. So let's go back over here. Like I said, I won't bore you too much with this stuff. So I'm just curious. This one, oh, this does. Do y'all see this video? So is that kind of funny? No audio. That's what I was thinking. So the short version of, that's right. Okay, good to know. So basically this was a slide that basically said, I'm a security monitor, not a guard. And so the punchline was, there's a robbery. So I'm letting you know. Gotcha. See, everybody woke up when I did that. I'm gonna have to have more of these videos. So the reason I have that in there is quite often in the past in reporting and alerting, Splunk does everything you need it to do, which I think is actually a great plus. Other systems might go out there and collect the data, but then you have to write the alerting differently and so forth. So, with Splunk, you get it all. So let's see, I think, yeah, the last thing that I had this will have no audio either, but this is my dog, Kenji. I call this Kenji Splunking because he's basically in the water looking for rock. And the point of the story is that the cool thing about Splunk is it gives you a better tool, because in the old days, I had to go to every one of those 900 servers and figure out what was what. So that is that. How do you get out of here? And this was the last thing that I wanted to go in a little bit on. So at work, I talked a little bit about IT operations. And if you spend some time with this, they have this thing called the Buttercup store. And if you look at this, this is called like a tree view. And what you have is there's a problem with the database. And that database, since it's not working, migrates up to the middleware level. And that middleware level doesn't seem to be affecting the mobile app, but it affected the web store. And then you have these deep dive views. And it's not important that you can read this, but it basically monitors everything. And that's why, basically it's a much better debugging set of tools. And even from here, you can drill down into the application response time. And so that's one of they call it a KPI, key performance index. So it basically tells you, because your responses, normally it should be, seconds that you get a response when you click submit. This is taking 5,000. So you know you have a problem. And so rather than having to wait till a customer calls you, finds a number and calls you, you would have this tool here that would tell you in advance that that was happening. So that was that. There's not a whole lot more here, but again, oh yeah, you can see I don't use Prezi very often. Get out of here. So that was it. The Splunk resources was essentially going to be those websites that I pointed at earlier. Probably the most interesting is the Splunk base. So that is a good 40 minutes. That's a long time to sit and just listen to somebody. So I am happy to answer any questions either online or y'all can unmute and I'll answer, but I'll give you 10 to 20 seconds. See if anybody has any questions.
So basically, Splunk is it like a data analysis type of app? Like lets you like monitor certain services and stuff?
So starting at the beginning, what Splunk did was Splunk pulls data from just about everything, and it has the capability of basically storing it in a standard way so that you can combine, if you have 15 tools to do 15 things, you can pull all their logs into one place and look at it in that one place. So I call it a log aggregation tool. And then over the last 10 to 15 years, they've said, okay, we want to do data analytics. How do people do data analytics? And like myself, I use Python. So they actually went out there, and as in the case of Python, you can go here and you can say machine learning, and you see immediately the machine learning toolkit comes up. And by the way, learning how to go through and always read this very carefully before you install something. But this particular tool, if you look at it, you'll see that it requires, probably in the details, it requires what it can run on, and somewhere in here it tells you you have to install Python, which is their scientific library. But basically what you're doing with the machine learning toolkit is you're installing Python, and with Python you can analyze anything if you know it. They put a front end on it and give you a video, but basically they've extended that ability. Once you get all your data in one place, and you hear people talk about big data all the time, then they've provided you all types of ways of visualizing, which is data visualization, analyzing, and then all those other things, reporting and alerting on issues if you're looking for specific things. But that's a great question.
That's nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have a question. So, from what you've seen, where would you say Splunk is used the most, as in like jobs and just different departments that you've seen, like in the government and stuff?
So where it excels and where people, so I look at it, what do they sell above and beyond Splunk that they make the most money on and have the most consultants? Because I know a lot of their consultants, and that's in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is kind of, you cannot turn on the nightly news and not hear about an election being hacked, or, you know, or Twitter being hacked or somebody being hacked. So that's their crisis right now. That's the thing that everybody worries about. So it's used in almost, generally most IT places have a cybersecurity or security operations center, and they also have an operations center, an IT operations center. IT operations is important, and I did that for years, but cyber has become much more important. And then if you have it on premise, people use it for other things as well. And in my case, once people are very careful about letting you bring and install like Python in your environment, because if you have Python there and a hacker gets to your machine that has Python, they can do all kinds of stuff. So once you get it packaged as part of Splunk and get it approved, now I don't have to try to get Python and other things done. So I use it for just day-to-day analytics. I have a question in the chat room. It says, is Splunk an add-on to IDE? So I don't quite understand that, because I see integrated development environment is what I think of when I think of IDE. So basically, Splunk was built kind of as a command line thing, and then they built a web interface. And so this is the web interface, and this is my, this is a lab I set up. Is it an add-on to IDE, example Visual Studio? Okay, I might understand that a little better. Does it have an add-on to IDE? You know what? I would look because they do. So I know a lot of the development that's done on this is in JavaScript in some form of that. If I go back to Splunk base, let's type Visual Studio and see if they have anything. So we have Visual Studio code supporting add-on. So it looks like they have support for debugging user Python code. And a big part of this, I don't know if y'all have talked about DevOps at all, but it's basically DevOps is optimizing the workflow from basically solving a business problem with programming to the deployment of that code. And there's a lot of analytics in how effective people meet their sprints and go through their process. And there's a lot of free apps within Splunk to do that on Splunk base. Thanks. I'm glad I got it. All right, I'll give you a couple more minutes. Okay. And the last thing I'll say, so on a side note, I actually was going to have some things to show you guys, but if you go here and look at my data summary, I have no data. Because last night I was getting ready and basically every 30 days I install it all from scratch. And I had plenty of time to finish putting my examples in here. And a friend of mine from work called and I had to take his call. So I was probably still talking when this meeting started. So I thank everybody for your time. It was a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing the stuff that you come up with because I still want to install the add-on and monitor my Tesla, but I haven't had a chance to do that yet. So I think hopefully y'all have some fun doing this. And it's all about coming up with good ideas and finding a way to analyze them and, you know, come up with cool projects. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. This was very interesting. It was way more interesting than any videos you'd find on the Splunk website.
And I will add, Splunk is hard. I mean, even with my professional engineers, I'm super impressed y'all are going to go get your certifications. And I had talked about doing that. I haven't gone and gotten my certifications because I have excuses. I'm going to blame getting a master's degree and things like that because I actually went and took some training in between sessions of a master's program. But I will tell you that I used to work on interviewing young people that were looking at internships and stuff. And if you have this skill set and come on and do an interview, you're gonna probably know more than most interviewers unless I'm interviewing you. And that would only work to your benefit because if you understand this on a very basic level, I would say, oh, absolutely, we can find a position for you because the skill sets involved in doing this, we have tons of opportunities with this tool.
Okay, well, that was amazing. Thank you so much. But yeah, so now I guess we'll be returning to our regular meeting. For those of you who came from outside of the club, who came from the email string that we sent out, if you're not interested, you can leave now. We're going to start getting into the club-oriented things, but if you'd like to stay behind and see what we do, feel free to do that. You guys are all welcome. But yeah, let me just pull up my screen share real quick. Okay, so yeah, and also those of you who joined and are interested, because you know that was a great explanation for everything that Splunk does. I will be sending out probably another email with registration information if any of you are interested, but just so you know, we are at module 6, so out of like 12 to 14 modules. So if you just want to join us at another cycle when we start over again, you guys can do that. Or if you'd feel free, want to catch up, since I know a lot of you are high school students who don't have much to do during the summer, you can join us, or you can just watch with this meeting. So yeah, what we do, for those of you who don't know, we are going to go over like some of the stuff that we learned from the last module, just a brief overview, and then we're going to get into discussions, hopefully, and get more interactive stuff in. So just a refresher for everybody. Oh, by the way, before we start, how is everybody doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, y'all are a very lively crowd, but yeah, so hopefully we can get more interaction in once we go over the overview. Oh gosh, I suddenly don't know how to use technology. Okay, so I'm just going to do a brief overview. Module 4, we went over the upload, monitor, and forward functions in Splunk when you're uploading data into the Splunk platform for indexing and parsing and all that good stuff. So there's, of course, the upload option, which is good if you're uploading testing or data that is created once and never gets updated. So like, I think the example they used in the videos that they gave us was that someone took survey data and the data collection was closed. So they uploaded it to Splunk once, and they did that through the upload function, since they didn't have to update it over time, which is something you will do for the monitor option. And the monitor option provides one-time continuous monitoring of files, directories, HTTP, all that other stuff that's listed in the data notes and course notes and slides. They gather this information and monitor it over a continuous period of time and keep on updating the Splunk index. So for instance, again, another example they used was if you're keeping a file that monitors people logging into an account. So this and that file will show if somebody has gotten in successfully and from which IP address they tried to access the account from, or if they failed to log in successfully because they used a wrong password. You can use the monitor function, and that will over time update it so that it shows the password attempts over the past week or a year or a few days, and on and on and on. There's the forward option, which relates to the forwarder function in Splunk. And that, what that basically does is it's the main source of input in production environments, and remote machines gather and forward data to indexers over a receiving port. So yeah, module 5, this one should be pretty easy. We'll get this out of the way. They went over searching your Splunk index data. So as you can see, we have what a Splunk index would look like with all the time logs, and it's all labeled with events, timestamps, information, sidebars, all that good stuff that we went over in the labs. And we have the basic Boolean terms that people would use during a search to help narrow down your search results, which, you know, as if you narrow it down more, it's more efficient and it's easier to locate for Splunk and for yourself, just because you know, a smaller pool of data is equal to a smaller pool of results, a more accurate pool of results. So we have the 3 basics. I know there were some others about slashes and quotation marks, but you guys should have that information. But there's the and, which is basically if you have, say we have failed password, you were looking at your data term, your data, all of your index, and you're trying to find a index or a data entry or a times under a timestamp that has both the words failed and password in it. So you would put an and between failed and password to make sure that the system is looking for both of those terms. But if you don't put an and, it should be implied for, if you, sorry, what is the word for it? It should be implied between the two words if you have a space there. It's similar to like a Google search. And you can use these terms, these Boolean terms for Google searches as well, for those of you who don't know about them right now. But yeah. And then there's the or, that's if you want to find terms with either the word failed or the word password, or maybe even both. So then there's the not filter, which is, say you want to have all of the fields, all the data entries that have the word failed, but you don't want the word password to show up in any of them. So you're executing a show all the failed entries but delete all of the password entries. So yeah, things like that. Module 6 went over more narrowing down. This one was just quick. I'm just gonna go over it quickly. There's field operators that they showed. So that's what field operators you use when you're searching up stuff like servers and metadata values and stuff. So yeah, I think I accidentally cut off one of the greater than, less than symbols that you use for numerical values, but you guys should get the gist of that. And then there's a selected field and interesting field. So as it's listed here, actually I'll go back to the last slide. You can see the selected fields and interesting fields on the left side over there for those of you who need a refresher. But the selected fields, which show up on the top, are a set of configurable fields displayed for each event. So that's just like common terms, I guess, common fields that show up in your index. And then there's interesting fields, which are the ones that occur in at least 20% of resulting events. Yeah, so you can see those over here. So now that we've gone over all of that stuff, of course, we have the resources page, which we can go over after we have our discussion. But yeah, so does anybody want to talk about anything or have any questions or want to talk about stuff that happened in Mr. Larson's presentation? Okay, so how did your guys' labs go? I know some of those were may have been a bit difficult for some people. I mean, I think they were pretty easy to follow, thankfully. Hello? Does anybody have anything they want to share? Dang. Okay, so if you guys could come up with any questions, discussions, I'm just going to go over the resources that I posted. Oh yeah, and those of you who want to join the club, let us know. I'll be sending out another email to the same email chain if you guys are interested. So yeah. So some resources that I actually found. Unfortunately, after you get through module 3, all of the like individual module resources and videos, like especially those ones from University Tech, just disappear. So I did find some more general module resources. So obviously Quizlet, which is God's gift to the world. But yeah, Quizlet, there's some great stuff here. This is a really long one that I found. And it has all these practice questions and just like information, as you can see. Next one is the Splunk community. I actually said I would post this last week, but I didn't, so sorry about that. But yeah, over here, this is the Splunk community. If you guys have any questions, like say, I forgot what the certification, the cost of getting a certification is. I could search that up. And yeah, there's obviously like a lot of results that show up just from like other Splunk users or from Splunk administrators. So yeah. And then the last one I have I think popped up again. Sorry, wait. I'm so bad at this. The last one popped up during our last meeting, but it was the Splunk certification exam study guide provided by the website itself. Yeah, they have information on certification as well. And yeah, let me scroll down. And again, you have all these great practice questions that you can use with the answer keys attached. So, yeah. Who do I contact outside of the class or discussion? Okay, so we have a question. It's who do I contact outside of the class or discussion if you have a question? So guys, this is like, we're trying to like interact with each other. So you can guys just put it into the Google Classroom, comment under posts and we'll try to answer them. Or if you do them publicly, you can get answers from other people, other classmates. Also, but if you do have specific questions, you can email me or that Education Robotics for Youth account that's also managing the Google Classroom. I'm also still taking the course, so I can't exactly give specific information, but I can know a lot of people who are able to help. So I'll try to connect you with those people. But yeah. So I think we're going to have a lot more guest speakers in the future because that seems to have been like a really great thing. And obviously doing these discussions over Zoom is a bit of a hassle, not a hassle, but a bit of difficult, you know? But yeah. Okay, so do you guys want to go over anything or do you guys want to end the meeting? Oh, by the way, of course, there's the additional resources page because I'm going to post this on Google Classroom. So you guys are good? Yep. Okay. So, yeah. So it's 7 o'clock now. I guess we'll wrap up. Thanks everybody for coming. I'm gonna try to get more guest speakers to come for the next meetings, and hopefully, yeah, they'll go well. So, yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.